All right, folks, let's see how I do with this. So I read The Protest Psychosis by Jonathan Metzl, and I had the pleasure of knowing Dr. Metzl as a senior resident and seeing him as an MD, PhD in anthropology, um, uh, develop his career as a researcher. And this is just really an incredible thesis. He grabs you from the preface right away, um, where I think he says right away that from a historical perspective, race impacts medical communication because racial tensions are structured into clinical interactions long before doctors or patients enter examination rooms. And I think we've been talking about that all year long. Anxieties about racial difference shape diagnostic criteria, healthcare policies, medical and popular attitudes about mentally ill persons, the structure of treatment facilities, and ultimately the conversations that take place there. And he uses this whole book to show you this through the history of a facility in central Michigan called Ionia State Hospital, and shows you how it evolved from a treatment facility that was initially kind of a classical asylum into becoming a correctional facility before it was finally decommissioned in the 70s. And in the process, it went from treating primarily women with psychotic depression for long periods of convalescence and rehabilitation to confining Black men who were considered dangers to society, and eventually taking Black men who were psychotic in the prison population and considered uncontrollable to the point where they were admitting men who were considered to have what was being labeled as the protest psychosis, which comes from a Archives of General Psychiatry article by Walter Bromberg in 1968, uh, in which he thought that Black men's feelings were being stirred up by listening to Malcolm X, and that this anger was making them psychotic, stirring up the primitive urges within them as opposed to the civilized thoughts that they should have been having. And you can see this attitude coming out even in advertisements for things like Haldol. I think we've all seen that infamous ad for Haldol, in which a angry Black man is shown as being the quintessential patient who should be receiving Haldol, and it really I don't know. As I was reading through this, I was stirred quite a bit and disturbed by the history of our discipline. So, I think you should read this book um, with a view toward wanting to know more about the history of psychiatry, the history of how diagnoses are evolving and how they change with time and with culture, how the history of treatments evolve with the biases that are present in our society at the time, and how structural racism influences these things. Um, Dr. Metzl's conclusions are really quite uh, profound and interesting. Let me just zip ahead to this, some of the things I've got highlighted. Um, he talks actually quite a bit about even today, how our new antipsychotic medication ads are uh, prefaced as being um, primarily for white middle class women who need augmentation for depression or anxiety. They're not being shown as people who are experiencing hallucinations or lucid associations, which um, characterize the diagnosis of schizophrenia. And he actually talks about how the idea of treating people um, from a perspective of cultural competency actually works against understanding a diagnostic process, and actually works against enhancing cross cultural communication, that it actually blinds us as doctors to the ways in which the diagnoses themselves convey profound racial and cultural meanings. Um, he encourages us to remain continually aware of how social contexts, historical moments, and violent structures shape the perceptions of psychiatric realities. So that's almost 6 minutes. I'll leave that as my summary. It really is a profound book. He traces the history of Ionia. He looks at actual case files of 4 patients who were admitted to Ionia. He interviews attendants who actually worked in the state hospital there, and it gets their reflections on the patients and the times. And so it's very interesting as a firsthand historical perspective as well as social commentary. Have a good week, and look forward to hearing about the books that you guys read. Bye.